I guess this is the one that our presentation is meant to focus on. 1 in 10 police searches turn up contraband nationwide. And so what that means is people who do not know their rights are, I guess, more likely, more subject to having their rights violated, if that makes sense. Here's some statistics from 2016 about Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department. And it's just some racially broken down statistics showing that, sure, it's not a big surprise, but 54% of CMPD traffic stops were for black people in 2016. Searches 77% for black people in 2016. And the use of force over 80% against black people. So there is a racial disparity. I mean, I think that's everyone knows that. The question is, how do we end that unjust state of affairs? And I think knowing your rights is a good step forward to ending that. So I'm going to pass this off to Brian at this point.
Thanks. Sorry, I wanted to just apologize again. Like we said earlier, we were supposed to get started a long time ago. We are under a bit of time pressure. We didn't want to just leave without going through at least the most important points through this conversation. I guess I've been told that we're going to be coming back on March 9th.
That's right, March 9th.
Yeah. I will be there.
Location TBH. Location TBH.
I will be there. You all should be there. It's going to be a whole lot more interactive than what we have to do right now. But March 9th is all 3 months away. I didn't want to leave you, without any information at all. The purpose of this program, again, is just to kind of walk through common situations that can arise, and so that if you find yourself in one of these situations, you know how to play it out. All right, so protect yourself, protect the community, pass on what knowledge you learn. It's going to make everyone safer, protect your future in the long term and the short term. This presentation is going to go through the 3 stages of what's called a seizure. If an officer is just coming up and talk to you, is that a consensual encounter? Can you terminate that? Or does the officer have something on you, where you can't just walk off? Or, worst case scenario, are you about to be arrested? After we kind of go through those 3 situations, and your rights through all those situations, we're going to talk about some of the implications of those. What happens when you're arrested? You can be searched. Can the police search you in other situations? What happens if someone comes to your door? We have a new sheriff in town, Gary McFadden. It's in the news that he's informed ICE that he's not going to allow them at the jail anymore. And ICE has responded. They're going to go through the community and start knocking on doors. What is a person's right if someone comes to their door and starts asking for information? This is why this information is important. And on March 9th, we hope to have a large crowd, because by then we're going to see some changes in Charlotte, just on that one front. After we go through these consensual encounters, detentions, and arrests, and then searches, we're going to talk about some commonly held myths and beliefs that can get people in trouble. Now, when you're just walking down the street, if someone comes up to you and starts, making conversation, that's what we call a consensual encounter. You can walk away, you can say hi, you can do whatever you want at that point. You can keep on that conversation as long as you want. You can walk away. What happens if that person that comes up to you happens to be a police officer? Is that still a consensual encounter? I think that's how most people feel. but what the courts have decided that even if a person with a uniform on comes up to you, starts asking questions, the court's going to say that's a consensual encounter, and they're going to say, well, you could have walked off, you should have walked off, but you didn't. If an officer comes up and says, hey, how are you doing? Want to talk to me for a little bit? That can be your response in a consensual encounter. he's free to just walk off. Now, if I'm that officer and I keep walking on, you know, pressing him a little bit further, is that still a consensual encounter? It's not going to feel like it, but he's still free to walk off. One thing that I want you to take away from this conversation we're having today, if you're ever in doubt about where you are in any sort of police interaction, remember these two questions. Officer, am I free to leave? And officer, do I have to? Sir, tell me your name. What are you doing here? Do I have to? If you ask that question and an officer tells you no, you're good to go. One thing that we're going to talk about a little bit later in our midsection, can police officers lie to you? They can. And sometimes use as an investigation tactic. They're allowed to, except for constitutional questions regarding your seizure. If he's asking, if he has to sit around and talk, the police officer has to give him an honest answer. You want to talk to me for a little bit?
Do I have to talk to you?
No. You're free to go.
Okay, thank you.
What other question could you have asked?
Am I being detained? Or
Am I being detained? Is a good one. Is he free to leave?
am I free to leave?
Yeah, you're free to leave. Now, what happens if I come up to you and say, "Hey, I'm just in the area. I'm walking around, and there were some reports earlier or something going on. Do you mind if I just search you really quickly?" No, you don't. That should be your response. Now, if I say yes, obviously we go down a different road of that one. But what that was just there was me asking for consent to search you. Ordinarily, a search is going to require a little bit more. It's called probable cause. But if an officer asks you for your consent and you consent to that search, you waive that right. So if you are in that situation where someone's asking you to search you, or asking for you to give up information that maybe you feel like you don't have to, remember that question: do I have to? Am I free to leave? In a consensual encounter, you're free to walk away at any point. The problem is knowing when you're in a consensual encounter. Again, what's that question? Am I free to leave? If you're finding yourself in that situation, don't just verbalize. Put some action to your motion. Walk away. Keep going doing what you were doing. Just to express, no, I'm putting this in words, and I'm not interested in continuing this consensual encounter. Now, what happens if a police officer walks up on the street, asks for your ID? Do you have to turn that information over? No. Nope. Now, if an officer pulls you over, do you have to hand over your ID? Yeah, that's a different situation. It's just the driver that has to, and oftentimes you'll hear about a police officer asking a passenger for their ID. If they're not the driver, they don't have to hand over that information. The correct response in that situation is just, again, asking the officer, do I have to? And they'll have to tell you. What does this look like? Does this look like this is a consensual encounter? There are two men in uniform standing by him. Yeah, you can see how you might not feel consensual. The gentleman there seems to be having a pleasant conversation. If you found yourself in that situation and you didn't know for sure, you'd ask that question. Again, what are those two questions? Do I have to? And am I free to go? Now, what happens if you start consenting to that conversation? Are you stuck? Can you change your mind later on? You fortunately can. If you're talking to an officer in a consensual encounter, if you feel uncomfortable, you can let them know, I'm leaving, I'm free to leave. You can terminate that consensual encounter. Now what happens if I'm an officer and I come up to you and say, hey, we've heard about some break-ins in the community, just want to talk to you for a little bit. What should your response be? Hopefully not yet. Hopefully not at all. We're not there yet. Yes, you do. Now, if an officer says, yeah, you do have to, or no, you aren't free to leave just yet, we're in a situation where the officer is supposed to have some reasonable suspicion that there's some criminal activity going on. In that situation, we're talking about a detention, and it's no longer a consensual encounter.
So you can't lie to me at that point?
They're not supposed to lie to you about your constitutional rights. Yeah. And if you feel like if there's any question in your mind, so whether you're being stopped, questioned properly, keep asking those questions. Even if an officer comes up to you and says, you're not free to leave, need to talk to you, you're matching a description, whatever it may be, keep asking those questions. Do I have to? If an officer stops you, says, yeah, I just want to see what you have in your pockets. Do I have to? With a detention, with a detention, an officer is not allowed to search you just yet. They're allowed to search you later on if they make an arrest. It's just the detention. They can make a frisk, a pat down for weapons, but they aren't supposed to be going into pockets, pulling stuff out, manipulating what you may have in your pockets. That's a bridge too far. But if an officer asks you to show me what you have in your pockets, you do that. Has that officer searched you? No. You consented to that.
So I can stop myself at that point, but do I have to do it?
That's why you keep asking that question. Even, no matter what stage you're at, if you feel uncomfortable, ask that question. A lot of times, you'll hear about stop and frisks. This used to be a big thing in New York. I was in New York a few years ago. This was boiling over at that point. Officers are allowed to conduct a frisk if they think that there is a weapon on a person. But again, that does not allow for them to search. Another common detention that we see is a traffic stop. Like we talked about before, you don't have to present an ID if you're just on the street and an officer is coming up to you in a consensual manner. You don't have to present that. If you're driving and you get pulled over for speeding, you've got to show proof that you're allowed to be in that driver's seat.
Only the driver.
Yeah. If you're a passenger,
What?
exactly. Most traffic stops are going to be detentions, and they're not going to escalate any further than that. But you do have to hand over your ID in that situation. Oh, sorry.
And sometimes you can get away with using your immaculate voice and just saying, "Sir, do you know who I am?"
That may work for you. That's not work for me. I'll try that next time. I'll tell you how it works. Just speeding. Whenever you're in a situation where you may not be free to leave, remember, they're humans too. They happen to be wearing a uniform and have a badge. They're humans too. Be polite, be cooperative, but stay firm in asserting your rights. That's what we want to get across here. Yes?
What kind of determines whether it's consensual? I mean, from the officer's standpoint, what's their determination of whether or not, say, well, after they say, well, yeah, you do, what are they basing that decision on? And maybe you're going to get to that, I don't know, what formulates probable cause or
Right.
So can I use a good example? They watched a slide just before you guys came in on the guy that was walking down the street, the 911 caller that gave out the description that matched to a T to his description. Take it a step further and say that the 911 caller said, I saw this guy going into this vacant house and he just walked out, he's now on the sidewalk, he's wearing the jeans, the gray t-shirt, the black backpack. So when an officer now gets out with him, he's going to detain that person because he matches the description of the crime that possibly just happened. And another officer is going to go and confirm that there was a break-in and contact the 911 caller as the witness on this. So in that scenario that you guys watched, if there was a crime that had occurred, part of that would lead it into the detention at that point as far as just the voluntary contact of, hey, how's it going? Can we talk for a minute? Because we don't have any reason to hold you at that point. But if someone called 911 saying that you matching that exact description just came out of that vacant house where nobody lives, that's not to say that it's not your house. You might be renting it out and you just stopped by to check on it. But we have to confirm that. Otherwise, we just let you go and the homeowner shows up and says, he just went in there and stole copper out of my house. And then you're walking down the street with copper in your backpack. So that's where the detention then kind of comes into play, as far as an example.
Yeah, and that is a good example. In a situation like that, I imagine the next steps would be, all right, an officer gets on the scene, sees someone matching the description given, comes up to that person, says, hey, I need to talk to you, you can't leave just yet, you're being detained. What would normally happen after that point, or what should happen at that point, is if the police generate probable cause to arrest, that's what ratchets that interaction up to a point where you still have rights, but you're going with them. And even in an arrest situation, you still have that right to ask that question, do I have to? What I would expect would happen in a situation like what you described, police would try to make contact with the person who made the identification, the caller. Oftentimes, there will be a on-scene ID done, and if that person that saw this person breaking in says that's not the person, that detention should end. And that person who's being detained should be free to leave. If the caller says, yeah, that's him, the police may make an arrest at that point. These stages, they're fluid. A consensual encounter can turn into a detention, can turn into an arrest, and someone who's being detained could be let off because, you know, after police do some further investigation, they decide there's really nothing going on here. But no matter where you are in these stages, remember your rights so that you're not causing the situation to escalate. You don't want to be in a situation where you've got a consensual encounter. Hey, how's it going today?
Fine, how are you?
Right, and you're continuing to talk. Well, now I smell some weed, and that might lead from that consensual encounter and his choice to stick around and continue talking and giving me an opportunity to smell some skunky smell off of your breath. That might give me some reasonable suspicion that there might be something criminal going on. And going back to the situation that you described, there is no fine line between a detention and an arrest. A person who's being detained can be put in handcuffs, even though most outside observers would say that person's been arrested. He's in handcuffs. He's not going anywhere. Because there's no firm fine line, that can still be a detention. So a situation like this, does this look like an arrest or does it look like a detention? Yeah, I think the layperson would say that looks like a detention. But our courts have said there's some gray area, and if police have a suspect that they're detaining and there is concern for officer safety, or concerned that this person might try to up and leave, they can put handcuffs on that person. But even if you're in that situation, make sure you keep remembering that question.
So you said that was like a detention instead of an arrest?
No, I think I'm biased.
Well, you know this.
I think when the handcuffs come out, it looks like an arrest.
Yeah.
But the courts, you know, there is some disagreement.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it feels like.
Is that on the arrest, if you say you're under arrest, is that?
The point is that you don't know by looking at that picture. And it could be either one. And that's just something that we as your attorney after the fact can evaluate all those things, everything that was in the officer's front range at the time, everything that happened beforehand, and determine whether this is in fact an arrest that would require a different level, a higher level of information that the cop had to, I guess, pass constitutional muster to make sure that they are complying with the Constitution.
Yeah.
The question I have is brought about because of this gray area. Because psychologically to that person, they can feel like they're being arrested. So if I'm not formally under arrest at this point, but I'm in handcuffs and all of this is going on around me, I haven't been read my rights yet, so it's not a formal arrest. If my body language changes and all of that, you know, because I'm feeling like this is more of an aggressive detaining, couldn't that then lead to me being arrested formally?
That is one of the big. That's one of the big reasons we started this. We got tired as an office of seeing a lot of resist charges for behavior that could have very easily been prevented. If you're in a situation where handcuffs get slapped on you, don't escalate that situation by, you know, struggling around, rocking around, moving around, making it easy for the detaining officer to say, well, now I'm going to arrest you for resist obstructing delay. If you find yourself in a situation like this, just keep remembering those two questions. And if you happen to be thinking this feels like an arrest, just don't forget those questions. Keep asking those. If you ever feel like, well, do I want to do that, or do I have to do that? Ask the officer, do I have to?
What about, let's say, what appears they're being arrested to us. And let's say the community, or you have people who are surrounding them, and we're speaking up for that young person. Can they be arrested? Because I've seen that, and I've seen them, I mean, I've seen it on video too, but I've seen them arrest the children, the daughter who's speaking for their brother, or the mother who's speaking up for her son. So what are the rights of the people who are there speaking up for that young person?
You have the right to assemble, and you do have the right to video record. Now, the courts have drawn a line. You can't just be up in someone's face, interfering with what the officer is doing. If an officer is arresting someone, you can't get right in there. So, and if you get too close, if you get too invasive, you can find yourself being handcuffed as well. There is no firm line as to how far away you have to be, but you are allowed to record, you are allowed to protest. You just can't be interfering. I think arm's length would easily be in that danger zone where you could be accused of interfering.
Thank you.
I just want to bring up about the reading the rights. Everybody, a lot of people think that, you know, every time they get arrested, they have to get rid of the rights. So you don't have to get rid of the rights. There's only one time you get rid of the rights, and that's when you're under arrest and being questioned. So if you just have a warrant, and I'm not questioning on the warrant, I can put you in handcuffs, take you to jail, and I don't have to review your rights. But say that you are a suspect in a house break-in, and you're under arrest for the break-in, and I take you back to my office so I can interview you, then you're under arrest and you're going to be questioned. So then at that point I have to read your rights. So you don't get rid of your rights every time you get placed under arrest. So it's just if you're being interviewed.
Yeah, that's their policy. They can read them whenever they want, and we like it when they don't read them at all. But the only reason people think that they don't hear them, they're not under arrest, and they think that if they never heard them and they were eventually put in jail, obviously arrested, that some defect in the arrest is going to yield a dismissal of their case. The only thing that Miranda does, it's one Supreme Court case, is that if you are in a custodial context, if you're in custody in a police-dominated environment and the police ask you a question, the answer to that question, in the absence of those rights being read to you, is suppressed. It can't come in at trial. That's it. That's the only thing that Miranda is. It keeps the cops from interrogating you without telling you that you don't have to answer those questions, because you can't, under the Constitution, under the Fifth Amendment, you can't be compelled to testify against yourself. So if you're in cuffs and you're in the back of the cop car, you're in jail, and the cops, you have to have both of these at the same time. The cops say, like, did you do it? Often it's a lot more subtle than that. And your response, they hear your response, and they never said you had the right to remain silent before that, we would keep that out of a trial. That's all. There's no dismissal for it. You're not entitled to anything else. It's one of the biggest misconceptions with criminal law.
Can I just touch on hers real quick with the group and the arrest? So the proper thing to do would be to, everybody that's out there, get together, like he said, just step back away from what's going on with the police, whether it be across the street or the sidewalk. Everybody get together, you can video, whatever. Request for a sergeant to be out there. So either by the officers that are out there, say I would like for a sergeant to come out there and speak with us, or you can call 911 and say, we're out here at this location for whatever it was, we would like for the sergeant to come out there. And then we'll come out there and talk with you one-on-one about what is happening back there, so that you don't get involved in their stuff and I can stay away from their stuff and talk to you directly about what is happening. Yeah.
The concern is, I mean, we all know this, and I'm sure you confront it regularly. Mental illness, there are things that have been diagnosed, but then there are also situations that just as a socially marginalized people, there are traumas. So the moment that you see handcuffs, they're synonymous with certain things to a community. The moment that you see, and so when we have situations where those things are, like, I'm speaking from an HR perspective, at the discretion of, but those things are the default choice, more instances than not, in a detention as opposed to an arrest, then it is more likely that within that community that there's not going to, that those lines are completely blurred. That the ability to educate them on the fact that, oh, this is a detention as opposed to arrest, when somebody's screaming at you, you're arresting my son, and really that's not necessarily what you're doing. You don't really have the time to react to that, and it brings escalation to the situation that may not have occurred if it happened less.
And I'll be honest with you, not to try to, I know they're trying to speed things up, but when something like that were to happen, that's when then handcuffs are probably going to come out for the person that is detained, and that person will probably go in the back of a patrol car because of now the outside agitation that's going on. So completely separate from what was happening, it may have just been a detention that could lead to have a nice day. Now it's like, whoa, 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 okay, hang on. Now we're trying to explain everything, just give us a minute. They're in handcuffs and they're in the back of the patrol car. So then when the next person shows up, well, he is under arrest. He's in handcuffs and he's back of a patrol car. He's not free to leave. He's going to jail. He's not to say that he is.
Right.
So, and in reality, a lot of those times, in real play, like, well, if like mom comes, somebody comes, like, if you just stand aside 1 second, we're gonna have people come talk to you. That's usually how that's resolved. So it's rare that everybody goes to jail. You know what I'm saying? Because most times, if you communicate, you're like, I'll be more than glad to talk to you in 1 second. Let me handle this, and I'll be right over talking.
And this is the emotions, like you said.
I have a question. What constitutes 3 and 4 police officers poured up with one person? I mean, where is that line? Where's that criteria? Because what happens, and again, we're talking about from a perception standpoint, because all the bad stuff gets on the news. So my issue is, what constitutes, you pull somebody over, here come another, here come another, here come another, and you see one person, one child.
I think they put her equivalent to that. I think it's department policy.
And I'll explain a lot of times, and it's not anything that we know that we're even doing. So I might pull you over for not wearing your seatbelt, and he might be right around the corner and pull in and be like, "Hey man, what's going on? You want to do some coffee after this?" Yeah. And he might come up and just be like, "Hey, how you doing, man?" And then the next guy, he might be right around the corner, and he might pull up and be like, "What are you guys doing?" Right? It's nothing that we even know that we're doing, but when we do catch it, it's like, "Get out of here, we're good. Go on."
Or sometimes
because then we realize we turn around ourselves and we're like, "Oh, this doesn't look good." Like, guys, get out of here. Like, and that's what I had a hard time doing when I was on third shift with the young officers. Was like, guys, you don't realize that all of you going there is creating this environment. Like, get out, get away. So then we'll start calling each other on the radio, say, don't come over here. All you're doing is drawing attention now.
Or the one person could have, you know, felony warrants or something like that. So then it might be one person to you guys, but if you don't know who that person is, you know, you're gonna have 4 officers come because he might, you know, we might have an alert that he's a threat or something like that. So he'll come. So we'll have officers come. Just depends on the person. So most of the times, hopefully, we won't have 4. But if he's like you know, has felony warrants or is warranted for something that's pretty serious, we're gonna have. As a supervisor, I'm gonna have as many officers out there as I can get out there.
If we know that we're gonna have to take him into custody.
Yes.
Because if I know that I have to take him into custody, there's probably gonna be 5 or 6 officers that are gonna take him into custody because we wanna do it without harming anybody. If it's just me and him and I'm trying to take him into custody, it's gonna be a fight. Someone's gonna get hurt. Use of force of some sort. If there's 5 or 6 officers and we can just grab a hold of him, get him in cuffs, get him in the back of the car without anybody getting injured or any weapons being used, then that's an ultimate win for us, and that's why you might see more.
Okay, and I'm glad you're astute to that, because everybody's not, because what happens when you see people like us going down the street, you're going like, what the hell now? You know, and this is what we see. And that's why we want to be protected and respected and everything, but when we see something like that, it just gives us a bad pit in our stomach, because I told you, I'm background law enforcement all my life. But to see something like that, it pisses me off.
And there may be a traffic stop where you may always see another officer backing
We'll always have a
that officer. Okay, so that's why when you see a traffic stop, you may see more than one car.
Let me,
I think you'll see that in Harris County.
let me use one thing. Stephanie, thank you for that. You know, in these days and times, we gotta be real. I'm not looking at a color thing right now, black, white, whatever. I'm saying, let that go out the door. If you are stopped and they bring up 3 or 4 cop cars, 8 deep or 12 deep, 2 words you say is thank God. I'd rather be embarrassed than be dead. Sometimes you have an advantage, I'm saying, when you have 3 or 4 cars, I'm saying, right there with you. You got cameras, you have people. There's other people on the sidelines, they're looking like, there must be something really going on over there. Let me put my head out this damn window. You got people looking, the more people I'm saying, whatever. I'd rather be embarrassed than be dead, y'all. But they put me over, I'm saying, mama say to them, and oh, honey, I was just going over there, I was just going to pump and get some stuff for my husband. Ooh, why they do me like that? You'd rather be embarrassed than to be dead. The more cops, you're gonna put me over 5 or 8 cars deep, I don't care. You don't put me over. I'm straight. But let's stop getting into that. We get into the stereotypical thing, I'm black and saying, oh Lord, they can take 5 or 6 cops, but you know, these days and times, a lot of things are going on, you'd be surprised. People riding down the streets and bending them saying the dead bodies in the back. You gotta, come on, you gotta be more than that. Am I right or wrong?
One more question, I can get back on the arrest.
I wanted to understand that what you said, and I don't know if the lawyers are here, I wanted to roll back to talk about information is suppressed. So do the lawyers have to bring that out, or is it an automatic right? And what if there's a discrepancy and the individual said they didn't get the Miranda and the people said they did, and there was no cameras, there was no, how is that brought to front, and what situations would that occur?
Yeah, it is something that the lawyer would have to make a motion to suppress on. It's just a procedural thing that you would do in the context of a trial.
How's that identified?
And that's something, and that's a good question about what if the accounts differ, and they often do, which is a good thing. CPD does have these cameras on. They're supposed to record every relevant interaction, and when it comes to majority of crimes are, misdemeanors, and they're not gonna be in, a Law and Order episode in the interrogation room, double mirror and stuff. And you're riding to the police station, you're in the field, you're in handcuffs. In my experience, that's where the majority of those occur. And they do have those body cams. You can see them right there in the front. They're magnetic. There are CMPD's like the biggest Mecklenburg County law enforcement agency, obviously by far, and the most well-funded. There are other law enforcement entities that you might interact with that do not have body cameras. Uptown, you got those G4S guys. I don't think, Mid Hill has them. Some of these rural parts of the county might not have them. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there could be a situation where you'd have to, it'd be he said, she said about whether that was indeed delivered or not. And that might be a problem.
No, but just 2 points on the Miranda stuff. First, your lawyer is not going to be able to suppress anything that you just blurted out.
Yeah, spontaneous utterance.
If you find yourself at the back of a police car and you've been arrested, you're definitely in custody. It's not going to do anything. You're not going to have any luck if you just blurt out, "I wasn't that drunk."
Yeah.
That's coming in. That's coming in.
Or if you're, I mean, it's human nature to want to explain yourself. And you could feel just like, he was coming at me, so that's why I hit him. Like, it's better if you don't say anything. Like, just, and that might
Many
be.
times we tell you, please don't say anything.
Yeah.
Please tell you.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's just always a good idea to not talk to the police. Yes, ma'am.
No harm.
Question, going back to the video, there was an incident in Tennessee last month. You see it about in the mall, about the young man with the hoodies.
Yeah.
And the officer told the man who was filming that it was against the policy, he could arrest him. So the policy here is you can videotape as long as you're not obstructing.
Yeah.
Is that a nationwide policy? So we travel.
There's a
we
U.S. Supreme
videotape?
Court
Okay.
precedent saying your First Amendment rights include the right to assemble. That means I'm allowed to be in this public place, and if an officer and an arrest happen to be also in that public place, just because the officer is making an arrest does not mean, okay, this area is closed off. You're still allowed to be there. You're just not allowed to interfere with the officer's discharge of their duties.
Resist delay. A lot of people don't realize that the delay is in there, and it can be just a moment's delay to satisfy that element and convict you of resist. And if you're being put in handcuffs, whether you're detained or whether you're arrested, you're clearly not free to leave. So better just like collect that. If they got it wrong, and if they didn't have enough to arrest you, then we will sort that out, and we will suppress it under the Constitution. We will get it dismissed because of an illegal arrest. But don't add on a resist charge because you think that they're wrong. They might be wrong. It might be so obvious that they're wrong. But better to just let us sort that out after the fact and remain calm and do what they say at that point.
Once we've ratcheted up from detention, if you find yourself in handcuffs in the back of a cruiser and you're going down to the magistrate's office, we've gone beyond reasonable suspicion that you might have done something to probable cause that you've done something, and you find yourself in an arrest situation. You still got rights.
And a probable cause standard is basically more than half. It's probably happened. It's well below what they have to find in court to convict you of something beyond reasonable doubt. But it is harder for them to make. But again, if they've determined that and you're under arrest, they say that you're in the back of the car's moving. Let us determine whether that's going to save the day or not. Don't just be like, no, that's definitely not what happened. So let go of me, and that's how you get a resist charge. And you could be mistaken, and now you have two. And it's a lot more difficult to get out when you have the more charges you have, the less leverage you have in the courtroom later on. And because, so I think the whole thing, I think one of the main purposes of these presentations is to find the balance between protecting your own safety, cooperating to the extent that you're not going to get hurt, and protecting your criminal record, which is in many cases just as important. Don't help them convict you of things. You know, they have a job to do, keep the population safe, but they also are looking to find out if you're doing a crime, whether that's possession of marijuana, drink, DWI, assault, anything under the stars. You know, they are actively looking to find people who are doing those things. So you don't do what you can to stay safe, be calm, do what they say when they say that you have to, but don't consent to searches. I think this is anecdotal, but in my experience, I think the two things that get people searched the most are odor of marijuana and consent.
This is in Colorado yet.
That's right, that's right.
Yes. When should somebody ask for an attorney? I want to see my attorney.
I would love if
Early on.
people would ask for their attorney from the very outset.
That should be the first point you make.
You have the right to counsel derives from the 5th and the 6th Amendment, and they attach at different points. And immediate, as soon as you're under arrest, you have a right to an attorney and the right to remain
Arrest,
silent.
not detention.
Which is often muddled, like we were saying. So you're not gonna get in trouble for saying you want your lawyer, even if you're too early, you know. And there are certain things where questioning must stop if you invoke that right. So it's always a good idea to ask those questions. The same too that we've been talking about. Am I free to leave? Do I have to? And then later on, I'd request an attorney. I'd like to speak to an attorney.
Now, even when you find yourself in an arrest situation, just because you're going downtown does not mean that you give up all of your rights. We know the answer to that first question, am I free to go? We know that answer isn't good.
Yeah, that's not happening.
But if you're ever in doubt, keep asking that second question, do I have to? Even in an arrest situation, that's what's going to protect you.
Can you explain, because sometimes people don't maybe understand, you have the prosecuting, or the prosecutor or prosecuting attorney versus defending or defendant. Can you explain so that who works under the prosecuting attorney and who works under defendant? So can you explain, because some people don't know when they see the judge or they hear that there's a prosecuting attorney. And I think people need to understand the difference and why sometimes you shouldn't talk too much.
That, yeah, that's a can of worms right there.
The elected district attorney is he's an elected office. His name is Spencer Merriweather. He was just elected. All of his, he doesn't actually do any trials at this point. It's great. And he has an entire staff of assistant district attorneys. They call them ADAs, prosecutors, who are in the courtroom at the front with the little chucks that they're called. They look like little envelopes in front. They are the prosecutors. There are different, there's defense attorneys, we are defense attorneys, but we are employed by the Mecklenburg County Public Defender's Office. So we're assistant public defenders. Our boss, Kevin Tully, the chief public defender, is an appointed office, but it's, I guess, kind of similar to Mr. Merriweather in that he is the figurehead of the office, although he's not court out. There's not going to be a lot of contexts in which you're talking directly to a district attorney unless you're in the courtroom before. They're not allowed to talk to you if you have an attorney. If you're a defendant, of course. If you're there as a witness, you're probably their witness, and they'll talk to you then. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
There you are. Yeah, okay, so once you're under arrest, unfortunately, they've decided that you're under arrest. They say, I'm arresting you for X or Y. First of all, the statute dictates that they should and must inform you of why as soon as they can. I don't see a lot of fruit from this being violated that often, unfortunately. Sometimes they just well, hold on, I'll take a second. So, although you are entitled to know what you're under arrest for, might not happen immediately. But when you're under arrest, they have the right to search your person at that point. It's called search incident to arrest. The Fourth Amendment, the general rule of the Fourth Amendment says you cannot be searched without a warrant. It's subject to a host of exceptions, obviously. Probable cause that they believe they have, more than likely that you have contraband on your person or evidence related to a crime on your person, they may search you. Consent is another one. Marijuana smell would be probable cause because it's illegal to have marijuana in North Carolina. So if they smell marijuana, they can search you. And marijuana can be anywhere, so they can search your whole person. But after you're under arrest, they can search you. It's called incident to arrest. They can search anyone who's going to jail because they've already been arrested. Mr. Eddie Thomas, one of my colleagues, whenever we were chatting this week about me coming here with these my long-haired friends here to deliver this presentation, he was like, make sure you tell them to only do one crime at a time. Don't do any, but you'd be surprised how many people go shoplifting with marijuana in their pocket or something, and they're under arrest for whatever they've just been caught doing, and boom, they've got something in their pocket. That's not smart. If you're going to be arrested, they're going to search your person. They're going to find it. There's going to be not just on the scene, but then later on, you're going to have to change clothes. It's not a good idea to have anything on your person. It seems like a stupid thing to have to say, but it's kind of funny. And same thing we were talking about. I'm kind of getting out of order here, but we were talking about vehicle seizures, being pulled over. You have to be pulled over for a reason. You have to have reason to believe you have a traffic citation or you violated a traffic law. So if you had a drink, you should make sure that you're not driving a car with the tags are bad, because then you're going to get pulled over. I mean, it really is that simple, and sometimes just people don't think about those things. They have to have a reason to pull you over, and if they didn't, we can get it suppressed. Everything that happened thereafter, if we determine in the courtroom that the officer actually didn't have any reason to pull you over, we win. You go home. But one thing at a time, hopefully zero, but certainly one thing at a time. Any other research?
No. And this is all just, again, these stages are very fluid. Consensual encounter can turn into a detention, can turn into an arrest, and you can see it go the opposite way as well. We don't see those cases. Obviously, if you're being let go with no charges, we're never going to know about that. We only get the ones that don't end so well. But at the very end of the stage, the biggest thing that changes for a person is, after consensual encounters, after detentions, once you're arrested, they're going to be able to search. It's no longer just relying on consent. It's no longer, hey, what do you have on you, or do you have anything I should know about? They don't have to ask those questions. They're going to be able to just search right away. That includes your person, anything that they believe might be containing the contraband that they suspect you might have. If you're pulled over and your car smells like weed, or pulled over and they see that's a bag of weed on the passenger seat, they've got probable cause for marijuana. They can search you, they can search your car, they can search any container that they think might have that weed in there. And they'll do that search, and you'll have to sit and wait for them to finish, and then you'll have either a citation or you'll be arrested. There are a few other situations where you can be searched, but the main time we encounter a search is at the end of a search warrant. If police were to come by your house and start knocking on the door, asking to come in, you have to let them in? Correct.
No.
You do not. Now, if they say, police, we need to come in, we've got a search warrant, what are your rights then? You got a right to see the warrant, and if, they've got a warrant, and
it's got the neighbor's house number on it.
Says that they can search my house.
That's that guy's house. But yeah, if they have a search warrant, they've already been to the magistrate, they are going to search the house. Don't delay them, or else you could get another charge. Just like resisting the handcuffs, physically stopping them from coming in if they have a warrant. Just let us sort it out later. Hopefully that they they made an error with the warrant, or they didn't find anything, obviously. But just once you get to that point where it's no longer an option, you have to just yield at that point. But your rights don't stop there. If you're arrested, you're no longer free to leave. You can't decline a search, but you can decline to talk to them. And you definitely should not talk to them.
No, I think we've already talked about this a little bit. Whenever a person is in custody, if an officer wants to ask questions, they're supposed to read a Miranda warning. It's really easy to waive that, though. And you don't have to waive it. If you're asked to sign a waiver, you don't have to do that just because they're asking nicely, or if you feel threatened into doing it, you don't have to sign that. If you're at that stage in the process, they'll tell you that you have a right to an attorney. Ask for that attorney. If this is violated, that's the situation where we can get any statements made in response to questions suppressed. But if you waive those rights, there's not a whole lot we can do. So make sure you act on those rights. There's a myth that if you're not read your Miranda warnings, your case is going to get thrown out. It's not true, unfortunately, but it does mean that anything that you may say in violation that may have been asked of you and you respond with could be suppressed. But if they've got other stuff to work with on that case, you're still going to have a hard time in court. Just because they don't read a Miranda warning to you does not mean your case is going away. Now, and the main takeaways from all of this is if you're ever in a situation where you're having an interaction with a police officer and you feel uncomfortable or you want to assert your rights, you don't know where exactly you stand in all of this, those two questions, keep them in mind. Am I free to go, and do I have to? Be polite about it. It's an interaction between two human beings. Stand firm, assert your rights. Be polite about it, but don't feel the pressure to just waive your rights just because of the situation. It's a really nerve-wracking place to be. But that's why you just need to refocus in.
It's easy
for the questions.
It's easy for us to say, when you're in the moment, you don't have the kind of legal training that we do, and it's difficult to keep your emotions in check and to think critically. But it's important to try to just take a deep breath and think critically, and remember what you learned, and do not waive those rights, but don't resist in a way that can get you another charge.
If you find yourself in a situation where you are looking at charges, make sure that you pay attention to your surroundings. If you see other people around, take note of how many people there are, who they are. If you happen to know any of them, make sure you get in contact with them soon after. Try to get them in touch with your attorney if you get appointed an attorney, or if you have your own attorney, so that your attorney can see if they can assist in your defense at all. Be observant, what time of day it is, what conditions were like, anything like that may be helpful for your case if it comes to court. Now, the CNPD officers that spoke before talked about there is a process where citizens can follow up on behavior that they think might not have been completely coded. Now, Chief Putney has said that he wants the citizens of Charlotte to feel like they can trust the Charlotte-Mecklenburg police, and he's been very vocal. Hey, if you feel like one of my officers has done you wrong, he said that he wants to know about that. He has made a review process available And he has said that he wants people to feel free to make any complaints they might have. Even if you feel like you're in a situation where you may feel like you're powerless to do anything, if you feel like you have a substantial complaint, make that complaint. Those can rack up. If there is a problem with a particular officer, nothing may happen because of that one complaint, but if it becomes a pattern, there might be something changed later on. Chief Putney has said that he wants that, and if that's something that he recognizes is going to be helpful for promoting trust in the community, he wants to see that happen. If you find yourself in a situation where you may walk away without any charges, but you still feel like your rights were violated, you're still allowed to file that complaint. The same rules apply. Just make sure that if you're ever in a situation where you're having an encounter with the police, make sure that you remember those rights to protect yourself. And with this review process that Chief Putney has put in place, you're protecting your community. Just make sure that you're smart about it. Make sure that you're thinking things through. Make sure that you're not doing anything that is going to further escalate the situation. That's ultimately the goal here. Make sure that everyone is able to better protect themselves, their legal rights, and as a result of that, really it's about protecting everyone else, protecting the community by making sure that we've got these tools in place and they're being utilized. Hopefully, it becomes a pattern. And we're not having what could have been just peaceful interactions turning into charges, and ultimately makes my life easier because I have fewer cases to contend with. So that's me being a little selfish, but we hope that was we hope that's the takeaway. Do any of you have any follow-up questions? Sure.
However, if there is a public defender and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or is it by oath or by whatever, do they have to do certain things? If they don't, can they get in trouble?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
To say I'm a public defender and I will do this and that.
well, there's an oath you have to take to be barred.
Yes.
And then just in our office, I have 3 bosses. The big boss, Kevin Tully, he's kind of the top of the pyramid, but there are several layers of review for just about every attorney in our office. Tony Purcell and Celine Roberts are 2 of my direct superiors. Hopefully, I don't ever have any issues come up, but just about every attorney is accountable to at least one other person. Any other questions or anything we didn't go over that you'd like to hear about? All right, well, thank you.
Before everyone leaves, wanted to ask if there's an interest in doing role play with CMPD, the audience, and Brian's going to stick around for a minute. Is there any interest? Role play?
Handcuffs on. We need a full thing too.
She's sweet.
Always gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt.
Do you guys have any questions for us? Do you guys have any questions for us at all?
Yeah, any questions for CMPD while we have them here?
I'll let you finish.
I have a question. Yeah. So, what the attorneys share with us about, what some of the rights of citizens are, do I have to answer, am I free to leave? Just in a very real situation, if someone was to say it, let's just say it's a young black male. And what the attorneys from the public defender's office shared with us. And if someone, let's just say in your regular routine, I know we all, as officers,